Welcome back, Inside Edge. And today we are going to hear from Yvonne Tully about a topic of busy. She has some particular ideas about busy, the pros and cons, and she was around a lot of busy people apparently up in the Silicon Valley. So up there are a lot of shakers and movers, just like Orange County, right? We're all shakers and movers. Well, apparently there's a downside. So I don't know if any of you have hit that wall of being too busy, but let's welcome Yvonne Tully to hear about being busy.
Thank you. Oh, I'm on. Good. Good morning. Good morning, Orange County, I should say, right? Busy, 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 busy. Yeah, it seems to be a big thing nowadays. That is for sure. But I'd like to approach it a little bit different because today I want to share with you some practical solutions and some mindful practices. I think both are very important for finding the balance in all of our lives. So it's about creating time and space. And I'll just talk about that real quickly. After all, busy is about time. Or is it? Is it about something else? Yeah, it is. So when we choose to create time and space that is free from distractions, noise, worry, fear is a big one. When we choose to create time and space free from that is when we can bring our most unique gifts forward, right? Bring them into this world. That is where we can discover and amplify those gifts. By the way, gifts that you have that no one else in this entire world has. No one on this planet has what you have right now, present and available within you. I think that is amazing. Just take a moment to click into that. Your unique gifts. And when we choose to make time and space with mindful intention, purposeful focus, that is when we can move our best life forward and bring our most meaningful work into this world as often as possible. And that's what this is about. That's how we care for ourselves. That's how we care for the people that we love. And that's how we honor and care for the world that we all share. The world around us, the world that moves through us, and the world that's beyond us. But when we're busy, what happens? We forget about those mindful intentions. We forget about the purposeful focus because we're distracted. We're distracted by the stuff that we think we should be doing, the places we should be, the things we should be saying, the voice that we should be speaking. We get distracted by all of those shoulds. Our awareness is fragmented. So at the surface, when we talk about busy, it doesn't really seem like a big deal. Does it really seem like it's that big of a deal? But it's kind of something like this. We have two sides I believe we have two sides. It's like a bird that spreads its wing to fly. And on one side, we have this practicality. We have the practicality of life. And on the other side, we have this spiritual, soulful self. When we're busy, one of those wings gets tucked in. It's the spiritual, soulful self. And we see a lot of this all around us. We see a lot of people that are focusing on that practical side of life. Why? Because we have to. There's things to get done. I mean, it makes sense, right? We have busy lives. We've got more distraction coming in day out. But for us to soar and really bring our best possible life forward and our most meaningful work into this world, both wings, both sides of us need to be nurtured and cared for. So that's what I'm here to talk about, is the practical solutions and the mindful practices that we can create together. Because I believe that if you walk forward into this day, each day, with your most unique gifts front and center, with mindful intention and purposeful focus, what happens? I like to engage. What happens? Yes. Yes. And what happens when you feel fulfilled?
Happy.
Yeah. And what happens when you feel happy?
You have more to give to the world.
Yeah. People around you go, gosh, I like that person. Really happy. Kind of want to get a hug, right? It feels good. People feel good. When you're happy and you feel fulfilled and you're putting your best foot, your most unique gifts out into this world, and you bring your most meaningful work forward as often as possible, if we all did that every single day, one act, one mindful intention, just think how things would begin to shift. That's all it takes. It's like when you're standing in line this is an easy one, when you're standing in line getting a cup of coffee and you pay for the person behind you. What happens? That person just paid for my coffee. That person just, and it trickles down, right? So when we're busy, when we're distracted, when we're getting over here on that side where we're just really focusing on all those things that we have to get done, it trickles out and forward and behind. So our elders that we love and care for, we start to forget how to really be in with them in the moment, right? 5 minutes of mindful intention with someone that you love and care for. Do you know how that shifts the day? I was speaking with in a group that last week, and she said, I get so frustrated when I'm in the checkout line, and the person in front of me starts talking to the checkout person, like, I've got places to go. And I thought, we know we've all done that. You're sitting at the stoplight. I can't believe how long does it take for this thing to turn green, right? It's the same amount of time as yesterday, but today, for some reason, it feels like it takes forever. So as I was sitting there one day, being the mindful person that I am, and I thought, I can't believe how long this light is taking to change. And I looked at the bumper in front of me. You know what it said? I'm not in your hurry. Thank you. That was a gift. It reminded me to bring myself back to being a civil, nice human being. So, busy. When we get busy, all of those things start to happen, and we get really, really distracted. And if you're experiencing in your life conflict in your relationships, your health has changed, your wellness is being, impacted. Those are ways that we know that we're too busy. And yeah, there's symptoms for other things as well, but they're really, really apparent. For instance, you're driving home from work and you go, I just can't seem to get it right. It seems like every time I try to do something, it just gets off track. And I can't believe the conflict I'm having with these people in the office. And what about my spouse? I can't believe that person did that again after numerous times telling him not to. Right? All of these things start to spiral. And then out of nowhere, someone asks us a question and we look at them and we say, what? What do you want now? Right? We have no patience for it because we're distracted and we're depleted. And we've shifted our energy to all the things that we really don't want to bring in our life, but we're focusing and we're working from a place of scarcity. We're focusing and we're working from a place of fear. And when we do that, what happens? We just invite more of it. It's like fear goes, oh, fear's over here. Okay, yeah, I'm going to go over there too. So frustration, it all follows. It just starts to snowball. So, great, Yvonne. I feel great. I'm glad I came to your talk this morning. We're all a mess. We're not. There's ways that we can start to balance that. So the first thing we want to think about really as we kind of delve into our...
I'm afraid you're going to step in there.
Oh, into the heel?
Yeah.
Well, if I get stuck...
I'll catch you.
Thank you. Okay. I know, I move around a lot. Why? I have 3, because I'm busy, right? So as we move forward into our time together today, I just want to really kind of anchor our space together, right? Because it's no coincidence that we're together here, each one of us together today. There's a purpose here. There's a reason that we all found our space together. So to anchor that, there's 3 things that I kind of like to do. So if you're willing to participate, that would be great. And I think you are because I saw how you started the morning already. So the first thing I'd like to do is take a big, collective, purposeful, energetic breath together. Ready? Nice deep inhale. Inhale. Big exhale. I love that. Let's do it again. It's like the sound of the ocean. Big exhale. We're going to do it one more time, and at the top, you're going to hold it for 1 second. And when you're up there at the top, set an intention. Just one word. Ready? Inhale. Hold it. Exhale. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, what we just did is one of my first tips for you. You've all done it many, many times, okay? Because when we take a deep breath in, do we know what happens? It stimulates what's called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve can settle your heart rate, lower your blood pressure, and decrease the cortisol that's produced from stress. I heard people, as we were talking about the being busy and what that means, I heard a lot of people talk about stress. So that's one of the things that you can do in the moment is just take a deep breath. When you're in a conversation with somebody or a situation and you can't remove yourself from that, it might look a little awkward for you to sit there and take a big breath, but I have confidence that you'll find a way to cover it up and do it anyway. Right? Like, you know, there you go. And they're going to think, oh, gosh, that person's so engaged with me. All right? So big breath. So now that we've got our vagus nerve all stimulated and happy, and I've taken a nice deep breath now, and my adrenaline has calmed down, okay, the next thing I ask, and I love this part because I remember when I was a kid, I come from a really large family, 6 kids. I'm the youngest. And so I was bossed around a lot, so that's why now I do the bossing, making up for lost time. But we lived up in Northern California on the Eel River. Is anybody familiar with that area? Yeah, and we had nature as a playground. So my mother, who couldn't get rid of us fast enough in the morning, said, go out, don't come back until lunch, and then after lunch was don't come back until after dinner. So every day that we went out, it was like a new experience because it's nature, and nature's not static. It changes and it moves, so everything was a discovery. And we explored. I remember the tadpoles down there and watching them change over a period of time. It was just amazing, swinging from all that great stuff that just really builds a childhood. And I remember just feeling so independent and alive being in that process of nature. So what were we doing during that time? We were exploring. So today, I ask that we just all be explorers. See what shows up. See if I say something or you hear something that you go, I like that idea. Or, yeah, I like that idea. I've already had that idea. And then another idea sparks. Or perhaps you have something that's within you, one of those unique gifts that you can share at the table or someone else. So if we just all adopt that attitude of being an explorer, and with that, what is an explorer? A curious mind. So let's just be curious. Let's see what shows up as explorers, and let's be curious about what it may mean or not mean to us. Sound like a plan? Wonderful. All right, here we go. Busy. What does it have to do with any of us, and why is it important? Why is it so prevalent? Why do we feel it so much more now than we ever have before? And why would anybody write a book about busy? Right? Southern California, Northern California, you go to Boston, everywhere I go, I see that pace. And you get into that pace, and that pace becomes our juice. What we become used to, what we practice grows strong. So if we're busy being busy, we're going to get really good at it, right? Going to get really, really good at it until we get to a point where it just becomes our new normal. We don't know anything. We're not going to explore anything else. I remember my mother coming home from work, and we'd say, Mom, sit down and relax. She'd look at us like we were crazy. She didn't know how to relax. She didn't know how to turn off because you get into that pace, and we're in that constant fight or flight all the time. So many distractions, so much noise going on all the time. And then, as I said earlier, those things, that relationships, work, career, wellness, health, all of those things begin to impact our lives in a really, really familiar and uncomfortable way. So when I wrote the book, I thought, I've got to help some people here. They say to write about what you know, so here we go. So one morning, like any other morning, I was standing at my bathroom counter, putting on my mascara, and all of a sudden, everything went black. Everything. I started to see stars. My throat tightened where I couldn't breathe. my chest felt like somebody had just sat on it, and I literally could not take a breath in. And my legs buckled underneath me, and to the floor I went. And so did the mascara, because it went everywhere. All of us know what happens to mascara when it flies out of your hand. And there I was on the floor, and I thought, I'm having a heart attack. I'm having a heart attack. Here I am, an organic eating, exercising, positive thinking, meditating person, and I'm having a heart attack. This can't be. And I remember thinking, I don't have time for this. This is really inconvenient. I have a whole day of things to do. I really, in that moment, I thought, oh gosh, that's just not gonna work for me today. But then I got really scared, and because I couldn't breathe. I tried the big breath, nothing would come in. So I looked up and I said, Mom, because she'd already passed, you cannot let this happen right now. Okay, I have to stay here. I have my daughter who needs me, and you cannot let me go. I need to be here, because I thought I was having a heart attack. So long story short, I ended up at the emergency thinking I had a heart attack. When the doctor came in, he looked at me. Of course, we knew I wasn't having a heart attack by that time, right? The EMT came, they gave me the oxygen, the whole bit, but I was convinced something really major was going on. So off to the hospital I went. That was such a gift. Yeah, it was such a gift. Why? I chose to see it that way. Choice. How we look at things. We know that, right? How we look at things, when we look at things differently, they change. It's all about what we're going to choose to see. And in that moment, I thought, I have got to find some solutions for this. Way too inconvenient to have this happen again. And that ambulance drive was way too expensive. I am not going to be in that place again. So I set out to find some solutions, practical and mindful, not only for myself, but for my clientele, because here I'd been working with clientele in the health and wellness for 20 plus years. And the irony of this was I was teaching them all these different techniques of health and wellness and practical solutions and mindfulness. I'm a meditation teacher as well, so I was, all having that happen. But guess what? I forgot to give some to myself. So I set out to create that balance, to fly with both wings, expanded, and to soar. And that's what became the book. So in the book, I talk about that, what I just told you. And what I found was that we all have that moment. We've probably all experienced that moment that I had in that bathroom that day to some degree. Would I be in the ballpark to say that? A panic attack, which is what that ended up being, or perhaps some really inconvenient event that happens in your life, and you all of a sudden say, oh, that's what that gift was. Whatever it might be. I mean, we see it all over now. People are experiencing things they never thought they would experience in their life before. So in that moment when I had that occur, I thought I'm gonna create something good from this. And as I said, that's what came from the book. But you know what? There were signals. There were signals, right? Because the universe is always eavesdropping. The universe is always listening. And guess what else is really interesting? You probably already know this. The brain wants to please. So if you're thinking things repeatedly, the mind is now going to look for evidence outside of you to make that story so. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. So the universe says, can't get her attention. So they whisper in our ear. We usually ignore that, right? We just keep doing what we're doing. So then they tap us on the shoulder. We usually ignore that as well. Then they give us a big kapow. And that's what that is, that panic attack or anything else for all of us. Is the key, though, is for us to get the message at the whisper, not at the kapow, right? So how do we do that? Well, I say honor our thoughts. That's the first thing I work with each day is how am I going to honor my thoughts? How am I going to honor that energy so that I can stay out of that busy lane? Because thoughts are energy, right? Thoughts are energy. Imagine if we all walked around with a pop-up above our head every day. what would yours say right now? Right? What would it say? Imagine that. So just think about that the next time we have one of those thoughts that might not be that advantageous or that kind or anything else. So honor our thoughts, and from there, as we start to move into the lane that we want to be, we want to move that busyness over to the optional column, because what's happening right now so often is we're putting ourselves in the optional column. I'll get to that when I can. So what are the signs of busy? Well, we often opt out of doing things for ourselves because someone else in our circle, our orb, needs our attention, needs something. So we put ourselves over to the side. Now, I'm not saying that in a way of being unhelpful or being gracious or being of service. I'm talking about getting yourself, again, to the point where you start to experience conflict, your health and wellness starts to suffer. Those are the things that we're looking at, right? Or the things that we might have enjoyed before, all of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, over a period of time, become just another burden of something that we have to do. That's another sign. Frequently tired, insomnia, skin issues, low libido. I'll pause on that one, just to let it sink in. Okay, those are all things that can start to happen. Why? Because we're ignoring and we're not nurturing ourselves. So we have to be able to nurture ourselves first and care for ourselves first, right? Before we care for others. That's right. So it's an easy equation. So how do we get so disconnected from that? Any ideas? There's this thing now called the comparison game. Actually, it's not really a thing. It's what I always talk about, the comparison game. There's so much energy coming towards us. I live in the Silicon Valley, so I've got Google down the street and Facebook around the corner, literally. So everybody is this, right? Now, as a health and wellness professional, I look at their skeletal structure and I say, what's happening? How can they sing if they're not standing up tall? How can they dance if they're not standing up tall? This is important, right? In fact, I was getting my nails done the other day. I always tell this story because I was fascinated with it. And the guy's son came in, and I'll just demonstrate. He came in, he's about 15, and he's like this. And he walked through the entire place to the back of the room. He got his lunch. He came back. His head was still down. Never looked up, went into the other room. He came back out about 20 minutes later, never looked up, and left. He never looked up. Not once. Now, we can't say that they're bad people for that or that's a horrible thing they're doing. This is what's happening. This is what's taking place. This is why this contact right here, when we look at each other, by the way, we get a nice hit of oxytocin and dopamine when that happens, when we smile and we engage, right? Our young people are not getting that. And even if you don't have children, you're still mentoring people in your life. You're still sharing your life with people. So if we're going to be the change makers, the thinkers, the pacemakers, that's not a good way to put it, but you know what I mean. Pace changers, right? Then we have to set a different pace. We have to set the example, because what we do, our energy is going to trickle out, and the people that we're mentoring and caring for in our life, then they can start to have that example of what to work for or to be a part of. You know, if we're standing there on our phone and we have somebody, our partner or our kids, and our head is down, just the same thing, and it happens all the time, what message are we sending to that person that wants our attention? They're optional. And then they do the same thing. So these little tiny things that we can start to become aware of begins with honoring our thoughts, and the other one is focusing on what we want, not what we fear, because it's in fear that we get stuck. We're afraid to make a change, and then when we do make that change, what happens? Yeah, one of two things. These are like, why did I do that? Right? What was I thinking? Or we step just a little bit further towards what it is we want. Because I can tell you that everything that we want in this lifetime is on the other side of fear. It's not back here. It's on the other side of fear. And I'm not talking about jumping off buildings, or where's my wrecking ball person? That's brave. That's brave. So here's a technique that I use quite often with my clients, and it's a silly technique, and it works every time. So if you imagine whatever it is that you are wanting to move towards, and you lay a line down on the floor. You lay a line down on the floor. And on the other side is what you want to work towards, what you want to move towards. And on this side is all you and your fear, right? So what you need to do, or what you can do, and this is the technique, is you literally step over that line. And then you turn around and say, goodbye, fear. I'm leaving you back here. And then you move forward. And you practice that. You practice that. And as you walk forward 10 or 12 paces, get into the feeling of what it feels like that you're actually moving towards. This isn't just about thinking it. This is about feeling it. This is about feeling it inside of yourself as though it's already happened. Because we're all, right now in this room, telling ourselves a story. It might be a story that we've told ourselves before. It might be a new one. Is it the one that honors your thoughts and that leaves fear back there and moves you forward? Just take a moment to think about that for a second. It is the one that honors your thoughts and moves you forward and leaves fear behind you. I don't know what it is that you want to bring into your life or what you want to create, but you do. Those two techniques and those two things that you repeat to yourself can help you do that. Make sense? Anybody familiar with neurolinguistic programming? Yeah, so I'm a master neurolinguistic programming practitioner. So a lot of the techniques in my book bring together mindfulness and practical solutions with a little bit of overlay of neurolinguistics. Because I find when we put all of that together, those are the techniques that really work well. So we can spend a lot of time talking about breaking up with busy. I can give you all the reasons how we got here. Economics, thank you very much. That's a big part of it. The comparison game. I see that person on social media. I started that story earlier. I got sidetracked, but here I'll go back to it. You know, social media is everywhere. Who's on social media? Right. It's great, isn't it? I mean, you can do some really fantastic things. Okay, we'll talk. You can do some really fantastic things. And I often say this, you know, we would not have the medical advancements as fast as we do if it weren't for technology, right? We would not have social movement and awareness as quickly if it weren't for technology. But when technology starts to come into our relationships in a way where it starts to affect it in a negative way, that's when we need to break up with that piece a little bit. Because technology is not going anywhere. And we will very likely find our solutions for this mindfulness piece in technology. It's not going to go anywhere. We have to have better boundaries around it. I won't spend a lot of time on technology, but the other piece of this busyness is certainly a disconnection from nature. And the less time we spend in nature, the less important it might become to us, right? You have to be involved with something and with something for it to have an importance in your life. And imagine what we can do for the generations that are coming up from behind us. And imagine what we can do for the older generations that perhaps don't get the opportunity to be in nature if we held their hand and brought them into nature on a regular basis. That's a great way to break up with busy. It's also a great way to stimulate all of your senses. Because when you walk out, the first thing you walk out, when we were here this morning, a few of us were here this morning before everyone was here, and we opened the windows and we looked outside, and what is the first thing we do? Yes. You take a nice deep breath. There's that vagus nerve again, just doing its thing, right? Feels good. You connect. Because we're a part of that. And if we forget that we're a part of that, if we disconnect from that, then we won't care for it. So we have to teach our children and the people that we mentor and also care for our elders in a place of nature. That is a beautiful way to begin breaking up with busy. 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes. So glad you put that there. Thank you. 15 minutes. Okay, I'm going to talk fast because we got something to do right now. All right. So we know that we know how to break up with busy. We have to make sure that we care for ourselves, keep our mindful intentions, purposeful focus. Very important. All kinds of techniques. I could go through the 24 that are in the book and the 52 at the end. A little plug there. But I won't, because what's really important is if we're going to begin a shift, what is one of the things that we can do? Honor our thoughts, focus on what we want. And there's something else we can do too. We can go back to the first thing we started to talk about, and that was those unique gifts those unique gifts that you have present and available right now, your attributes. They are the things, when you think about your life right now and anything that you've accomplished, anything that you sat down at the end of the day and you got, that felt so good. I feel so great about that, right? Just think about what that energy does. It goes like that, yes? Okay. How did you do that? What do you have from within you that allowed you to experience that? Your unique gifts is what makes you uniquely you, your attributes. So, if I may ask us to be explorers now, I'm going to take just a moment, 1 minute, for us all to take a nice big breath again. Sit up in what we call the posture of grace. Close your eyes if you're comfortable with that. And think of 3 attributes in 1 word each, so 3 words that represent your most spectacular, unique attributes that you bring into this world. Open your eyes, take a nice deep breath. Now, you're going to turn to someone at your table and share that with them. My attributes are, and then you're going to allow your conversation partner to share that with you as well. You're going to look at each other in the eyes, and you're going to really listen. You're going to really listen. Go for it. We've got 1 minute.
The telephone calls, the handwritten read. You probably do a little more than I do.
I don't want to interrupt, but this is beautiful. Thank you. Yes.
Is it possible for us to get your book? Or
I brought him up. Yes. 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 I've got that. All right. Did everyone have a chance to share? Thank you, Mary. Did everyone have a chance to share? Did we find common ground? Do you feel anything right now? Do you feel how the energy has shifted in the room? It feels good to talk about yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. It feels good to bring to your conscious mind those unique gifts that you have. Because what happens is we hit the mute button on them because we get so distracted by everything else that we have to do. And right now, you just brought them up. And we all get to share in that. I think that's fantastic. That is how you bring your best life forward. That is how you share your most meaningful work. That is breaking up with busy. Focus on what you want, not what you fear, right? Figure out what your need-want connection is. We get focused on the want, but we have to figure out what the need is. We didn't talk about that too much. That's about what's going to change for me. How will I know it's different when I get what I want? And also, and I think this is really important, take time to honor your thoughts, and honor your thoughts in any other way that you can by focusing on your attributes once a day. What am I going to bring into this day? What are those 3 attributes I'm going to share with the world today? That's fantastic. And guess what? As I said earlier, the mind goes, oh, that's what we're going to do today. And then we start to look for things that fit into that story now that we're writing for ourselves. Okay? Now there's one more thing. I have 10 minutes. There's one more thing. There's always one more thing. I talk too much. Okay. One more thing. And that is one more deep inhale and exhale. Love it. Exhale. This is the last minute of my presentation today. We're going to meditate now, those attributes. Because I want you to feel them now inside of you. Really feel what that feels like, bringing those attributes into today. That's all you're going to do, is that you're just going to meditate on that thought. Okay, nice deep breath in. And here we go. Beautiful. All right. You know what I love to watch is the faces. The color changes, settles into this beautiful space. Smile comes across many faces. Look what you've done today already. It's not even 9 a.m. Fantastic. Move this energy out into the broader space. You're all change makers. You're all beautiful, spirited, soulful, practical people. And we're going to share it with the rest of the world. So I thank you. I have, what, 5 or 6 minutes for questions? Q&A. Anyone have any questions? Anyone? Yes.
I want to ask how you personally infuse your one wing with your other wing daily. How do you make sure that you're balancing both wings in your daily routine?
Love that question. Thank you. It was interesting. Michael was speaking earlier, and he was talking about making lists. And it's different for each of us. I'm a list maker. But I also take a look, that's my practical side. That's where we're here. So I also take a look at, this is really important, 3 columns on a calendar. Anybody keep a calendar? Yeah, I do too. So what I found was, after I had that panic attack, and I really took time to say, you're a fraud, you need to change some things. I thought, okay, you know what? 3 columns. Must, that we spend about 14 hours a day in that column. That's work, everything that we need to make life go. Wants. This is a want moment. This is how we stimulate, how we amplify and discover those unique gifts. And it's how we bring into our space, conscious mind as well. What is it that I want? It's a bucket list, if you will. What is it that I want to create in my life? It's where imagination expands. You know, Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. I couldn't agree more. So make sure you have that must column. And then the third one, and this is a hard sell, is the just because. That's the column, has no judgment. That's the column where we give ourselves permission to shut down, turn off. I would say actually not shut down, but turn off whatever it is that we're moving away from, and turn on whatever it is that we want to create. No judgment with this column. It's a just because, and it nurtures your soul and your wellness. So that's the practical side. That's just a column making, and when I look at, and I color code them so that when I look at my calendar and I see too much blue in the want, or in the must, right? And it's all blue, I'm like, where's my lavender? Where's my just because? So it's a great visual, because I'm very visual. Making a list is the other thing that I do. This side over here is really easy for me. Meditation isn't something we do, it's a way of being. So, and it's a practice, and it's like anything. The more you practice, what I said earlier, what we practice grows strong. The more you practice, then the more you're able to be in that space. And meditation is about when life is chaotic and uncertain, which it is most of the time, often. It is being in that meditative state that we can move through that without getting distracted, without attaching our emotions to the outcome, because that's where we get ourselves into a pickle, is when we attach our emotions to the outcome, because now we get really focused on that rather than this right here. So meditation, absolutely the practice of, and then those 3 columns, and then making a list each day. And by the way, I love what you said. Michael makes a list, no more than 5, I think you said, just a few things. Make sure your list isn't like that, okay? Because when you start to make those columns, that list is going to change, because you're going to go, that's not really that necessary, because now I'm taking away from my want or my just because columns if the list is too long. Yes.
I wanted to say 2 quick things. One is I am so grateful that you are in Silicon Valley at this time. I don't think you could be in a better place. I'm very grateful you're here.
Oh, thank you. I was
Very.
like, wait a minute.
Yeah, very.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's wonderful what you can bring, and I hope that it ripples out all over the place. It's
Thank you.
fantastic. And I think when you're saying honor your thoughts as number 1, I would put in, I think, honor your feelings, even though you talked about feelings, but I feel my own self that if you're not aware of your feelings that's going along with everything else, it's harder to get to where you're going. And that you can, if you can identify it, if it is the fear, if it is anger, if it is hurt, if you can get there, it'll just propel the situation.
And I would agree with you 100%, Mary, because what happens, I always say, see it, feel it, be it. And that's the process. See it, and that's where you bring those really mindful, conscious thoughts in. And when you do that, that is going to bring your feelings up. So because we often will mute that part of us. It's so important to have that piece in there. So thank you for that. Yes, John. Oh, microphone.
Thanks. Thinking about your 3 columns, seems to me that I would like to get rid of most of the musts column altogether and move them into the wants column, because must
That's not allowed.
has a must has a connotation of no choice, and want is all the choice in the world. So if my must column says go to the grocery store, that's actually a choice to make if I go to the grocery store or not. And so in most cases, the must column should be very little.
Unfortunately,
in my view.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like I said, the average amount of time that we spend in that is 14 hours, because most of us, and I see where you're going with this, everything is a choice. We were talking last night about the woman that went into the cave for, that was a choice. So she doesn't have to go to work, she doesn't have to go to the grocery store. But my point is that the practical side of this, John, is that these are things that we have to get done. And if you're raising kids, you must pick them up from school. Or not. If they're 15, they can stay there. But you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, absolutely. And the wants.
So important. Make that
the,
column bigger, because usually it's like that.
If the musts in my mind are now wants in my mind, then the 3rd column becomes much larger, because everything becomes more flexible.
It's a beautiful way to look at it, yeah. Yeah, definitely. One more. Time. Okay, one more.
Well, quickly, I guess I want to say thank you for when, and when you said that you were a fraud, then I just looked at this, my experiencing being busy later in the day yesterday, and this morning, really still anxious. And I went, you watch television for 2 hours, and then you have 4 things to do in 1 hour, and you're busy.
Well, it goes back to what John was saying. It's
Yeah.
choice. But again, it's about bringing it into the mindful space.
Right,
And I
right.
love
So
what you just
wait,
said.
I
Because you
have
won't do
lots of
that
time.
tonight.
What? Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's great.
so I got it. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Yay. That's a great place to end. Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. It was wonderful to be with all of you. So spread your wings. Thank you. Spread your wings. Thank you. Thank you.